my blue kitchen. Is that going to throw y'all off? I'm sitting here in my car. I just did another video showing y'all a little sandwich that I bought from a little place in town called Drip Donuts. And I told y'all that it was on my heart today to tell y'all about why I left the home. Y'all wanted to know. Y'all wanted to know, how I got there. And then I told y'all that someday I would tell y'all how I left the home and why I left the home. Because, I stayed there and I graduated from there. And after I graduated, I stayed and became junior staff. And that was, I think I got $150 a month, and I lived room and board there free or whatever. And that was what me and some other girls that had graduated with me or the year before. I think there were about 4 of us that were considered junior staff. And we weren't girls of the home anymore. We were staff members. But anyway, I will tell y'all that, I had been there for 4 years. And some of the things that I saw that, like I said, life wasn't that bad for me there because my life before the home was so much worse, but it was bad for a lot of girls there, and I saw a lot of horrific things. But I had I can't think of what it's called. If you're old, if you're my age, you know about Patty Hearst, and you know that when you could look her up, she was kidnapped, and she became attracted to, or I don't know what the word is, fell in line with her captors. And so I forgot what that was called. I forgot. Anyway, there's a word for it where you become part of the people that are wrong, and you become, And so in my mind, when I was there, I was brainwashed into thinking that everything that the staff did and what Brother Mac did and all those things were good and right, and they were of the Lord, because everything was focused around discipline and all that thing, but it was because the Lord wanted it to be that way. And so I came to believe that what they did was right, even though sometimes it felt wrong. But anyway, me and these other junior staff, to tell you, gosh, it's so much. There's so much. So there were many forms of punishment there, and the most cruel and unusual punishment usually happened to girls that would run. They called it running, not running away, running. And so typically these girls would make their plans, and they would run in the night. There were alarms, but they would bust out those doors and they would run. They would climb over the fence. There was wire at the top. There was barbed wire at the top, and they would scale those fences and tear themselves up. We weren't allowed to wear pants, so all the girls that were running had on dresses and stuff. So, and the home was out of town. It was in Arcadia, Louisiana, but we were outside of town, sort of surrounded by woods. And so there was only one main road, a highway something, one or something, to get down there. So when these girls would run, they couldn't run down the road, because as soon as the alarms went off and these girls had left the building, people were looking for them. They were after them. So they couldn't go down the main road, so they would run through the woods. And so I only know of one girl. I was there for 4 years. I only know of one girl, and she was my best friend at the time. Her name was Amy. That's the only girl that I ever knew that ran, and she never came back. The rest of them, they would run. They'd make it into town. They'd make it into Arcadia to the sheriff's department. And the sheriff's department would have to let Brother Mac have these girls and bring them back, because he had custody of them. My understanding is that Brother Matt got full custody or temporary custody of every girl that was there for 1 year. Parents had to sign over that he had custody for 1 year. So even though they would run to the sheriff's department, it was almost like your parent picking you up, because he had custody. They'd have to give it, and they'd come back to the home and they would just be tore up from the barbed wire, from running through the woods, because they couldn't run down the road, so they'd run through the woods in their skirts, so their legs were just tore up from. I mean, they just would be horrible, and the punishment that would follow would be horrific. I mean, of course, paddling. I mean, they called it licks, paddling with the board, and it could be 25 licks. I mean, it could be horrible. Running was the worst thing you could do. There was a lot of things you got in trouble for, but running was going to be the worst thing you could do. And then they would make them wear high heels, like the highest heel that you could possibly wear, and they had to wear them 24/7. You could only have your heels off when you were in your bed to sleep. They had 24/7 had to wear these high heels, and they would also make them stand in the hallways on their tiptoes for hours on end, and you'd walk past them, and I would see them, and I would think, oh, how I would feel sorry for them, but I also thought, well, if they didn't run, it wouldn't happen to them, I mean, I was so brainwashed. They would also do this thing where they would make you put your arms out, and you put books on your hands and put your arms out, and you had to hold these books, and y'all, the pain. I had to do it only once, not because I ran, but I had to do it once because something happened at school. I can't remember. But I only had to do it for a little while. They would make these girls do it for hours. And I remember one girl that was on her toes, and she just, if you got down, they would hit you. They would hit you with switches and stuff to get back up on your toes. And I remember one girl saying, she just fell on the floor, and she said, it was the middle of the night, and I heard her say, just beat me. I can't do it anymore. I mean, it's just horrible. It was just horrible. And so anyway, just know that there was some pretty horrible treatment, more than horrible treatment of these girls. But I became staff, and another thing that would happen was you would get really close to a friend there, and they would separate you. When I was not staff, they would separate. Nobody could get real close. If they noticed you hanging around one specific person too much, they would separate you. And in my mind, I went there when I was 12 years old. I didn't even know what gay was. In my mind, I always thought that they separated us because they thought that we, not just me, but anybody that got too close. If you were seen together too often, they would separate you, which was very painful because we didn't have anybody but our friends, there. And so we always have to act like we wouldn't sit with each other in lunch or whatever. We had to make sure that even if we called ourselves best friends, we couldn't be together too much because they would separate you and put you on silence and all that. I could tell you the amount of punishments and the most unbelievable cruel things that they've come up with to be a punishment would be. But anyway, when I became staff, I was saying that I thought they were separating us because they thought we would get too close and maybe talk about running or something. But I really think now that they were worried about you being gay or turning gay if you got too close to a girl in the home. So anyway, when I became staff, I had a best friend. Her name was Valerie. She has since passed. She was 14 and I was 17. And the other staff members, I'm not going to say their names because some of them are still alive, but they all had a best friend too. And I thought, since I'm staff now, they're not going to separate me from my best friend. Well, there was one girl there with one's junior staff member that someone accused her and her best friend of a gay relationship. And so they called us all over there and they separated us all we could not have our best friends. It didn't matter if we were staff. They couldn't hang out with us. And there was one little girl there. Her name was Nancy. And I would say she was about 12 or 13 years old. She had long brown hair and she was so simple-minded that I think she probably had some form of autism or something. And Brother Matt called her his animal girl because she took care of the animals. She was always outside. We had horses. They had pigs. It was kind of like a farm. They had pheasants. They had everything. And she loved the animals and she took care of them. But she also loved the girl that she was best friends with that was junior staff. And when they separated us all because of that other relationship, which I don't know if it was a relationship or just friendship or not, but someone accused him of that. Nancy couldn't take it, and she lost her mind. And we had just had I may have to have part two. Because I'm going to run out of time. Brother Mac had just built a big new auditorium and gym, and it had our cafeteria in it and our school in it. It was huge. Churches donated to the home, and the girls that were there, also parents paid for them to be there, and also churches. We would go to different churches and we would sing and we'd give our testimony and we would cry, and the churches would feel sorry for us and they'd take these love offerings, and then these churches would send monthly love offerings to the home, not knowing what was going on there. I'm not blaming those churches, but anyway, he had taken that money and people had donated to make this big new beautiful, it was big and huge. Like I said, it was a gym, and behind the gym there was all one big building, but behind the gym was our cafeteria, and then above the cafeteria was 2 sets of staircases that went up to our big, what they called learning center in our ACE school. And so it was brand new, and Brother Mac was so proud of it. And when Nancy got separated from her best friend, she hit one of the walls with her fist and put a hole in the sheetrock, and we knew that it was going to be bad. So I'm going to end this one here. This is part 1, and I'll go to part 2 if you are interested to tell you the rest of it because I'm about to run out of time.